and how do you bring transparency? Greetings. My name is Anup Deshpande. The audience up to date on how do we implement the agility at the organization, not at the team level, but at the organization as a whole. So be with me in this journey, and you'll be able to capture a lot of information on how to implement this. A little bit about me before we jump into the session. I've worked with all of these organizations, either as an employee or as a consultant who worked on various projects for these companies. A special mention about some of the extraordinary experience that I have with Edison, that's in LA, at Yahoo for about 5 years, at Visa for 3 years, and many other organizations here. I've been associated with the PMI chapters in the larger San Francisco Bay Area, as well as Silicon Valley chapter and Monterey Bay chapter in Region 7. So here's the agenda for today. Scaling challenges. We'll go over some of those challenges that I faced, and I'm sure a lot of you would face as you grow in the career to that level. Approaches to transform huge organizations, handling business and technology enhancements together. How do you come up with value streams, and how do you map them? Continuous prioritization and incremental planning. If nothing else, you want to really understand how that happens. This is the crux of agility at an org level. And how do you bring transparency across organizations with automation? So to start with, I just want to coin this. When you say agile teams, they are not same as an agile organization. So you might have faced some of the questions like, hey, is your team agile? And is your organization agile? These are two completely different problems. You might have agile teams, but in order to get to agile organization, there are lots of different things that have to be considered. And this session will get you there. So be with me on this journey. So the very first one that I want to cover is many of the big organizations have this concept of PMO. The notion of PMO is a standardized set of processes that can fit into any kind of teams. And I have seen PMO being established for the regular traditional project management organizations, as well as the agile organizations. But most importantly, I've seen as we go along the journey of PMO, the value somehow gets missing. This is really important factor because the reason why project management exists in the organizations is because of the value delivery of whatever product, process, software, network, hardware, or whatever domain you are with has. The value is something that the project management, program management delivers. And this is really important for us to understand. This is something central to the PMO. And if we keep that aside, then it's a big problem. And that's where the PMOs come into problems when the economy is not right. The first step that I have taken in my career is to remove the notion of a regular PMO and move my PMO into VDO. VDO is the Value Delivery Office. there are lots of benefits and lots of value that the company would get if the PMO shifts their mindset from offering just the plain processes and standardization to offering value delivery of the product that you are into. There are lots of scaling challenges that I want to talk about here, starting with multiple funding sources. So if you are in a very big company or even a medium-sized companies, you will face this problem of how do we get to one backlog of things to work on for the teams. Unfortunately, there is no one backlog. There are multiple funding streams. One is the business funding stream. The other one is the technology funding stream. Basically, there are many more other funding streams, but these are the most important, most prevalent ones that exist. The other challenges are there are multiple value streams. So if you are in a company that provides a continuous flow of value to our customers, that is not just one value that the customer is really hooked onto. Customer actually gets a lot of different kinds of values from a product or offering of the company, and we need to check how these value streams work with each other and how the value flows out to the customers continuously. We'll look at that as we go along. The next one is the project prioritization across value streams. The problem that lots and lots of projects come along at the same time if you have big number of teams. I have worked with teams to the tune of 1,100 people in the organization, and 5 different locations, 7 different locations in the globe. So prioritization is the most important thing that the right set of people do all day long. That's their job in order to get continuous value out of the streams. And the world is complex in the sense that these value streams usually are bundled in terms of projects. So projects are going across these value streams, and that brings a lot of complexity in terms of how do we implement these projects. So we'll look at how to solve that problem as well. Portfolio planning level. So we will look at how do we come up with a portfolio that actually scales and that actually can plan. Just like the team planning for the projects, the portfolio needs to be planned and needs to be groomed all, not just at the start of the year when you get to the roadmap, but also continuously maintaining the portfolio is something that really is the bang for the buck. The next one up is the change management across value streams and transparency across organizations. So change management across value streams is really important because we want our teams to be nimble. At the same time, we want our orgs to be simple. Simple and to be nimble in order to navigate through complexities of the market, changing market, the direction of the leadership changing over time. So it's really important to be able to have our organizations pivot in one direction or the other and at regular frequencies. That actually can really be important for the organization's success. Transparency across organizations is needed if we want all the engaged employees. They all need to be leaders, and they all need to be able to make decisions so that the organization can move unidirectionally towards success. Team level execution and accountability. This is important because, as the orgs become nimble and they go into a real agility, really fast delivery, the team level execution and the accountability is the pillar for that success, and we cannot ignore that. Budgeting and accounting, last but not the least, is important because unless you know at the leadership level, at the finance level, how do you budget for these ever-changing needs, and how do we budget and account for the funding that we are getting and the execution that we are doing, and providing that value back to our customers? How do we account for that? That's really important as well. So we should look at these scaling challenges for the huge orgs. I'm going to talk about some of these approaches to transform huge organizations, and I have seen astounding business results with these approaches. So be with me on this journey to really learn how to get there. So as I mentioned in the scaling challenges, multiple funding sources is something that can trip you off. Have you ever been in the meetings or in the discussions where business and technology talk about which one goes first? Now, the business might say, hey, I want this project or a feature or a program to go first in terms of execution because, as soon as we go hit the product or the new feature to the customers, we would be able to get millions of dollars every month as our revenue. The technology, on the other side, doesn't have those arguments in terms of getting, $1 million worth of, customer, revenue, but they have a strong point that if our technology doesn't go to the next level, it doesn't get upgraded, it would be so unfortunate that the business functionality would take a long time to implement, and there would be a lot of tech debt, accumulated. So more and more tech debt that we get, slow and slower is the implementation of these new features for our customers. So both are important, but it's very hard to have that discussion every time there's a business functionality and there's a technology functionality being wedded, right? So it's important to have a solution for that and not get into the bad discussion there for every feature every week. So what I have done is to implement something like this. In order to get the focus on the portfolio, what we came up with is a business initiative and technology initiative as focus factors. So if you take 6:4 or 60% to 40%, year over year it might change. So next year you have less tech debt. By all means, consider 70/30. If you have even lesser debt, you want to or you want to focus more on the business on that particular year with all the new stuff that's coming in, you might go into 80/20. However, I would caution you here that when you go towards more and more business functionality and not look at the tech debt or the new latest technology platforms, you might start losing the race with the other customers. So you want to make sure your competitors are embracing change through upgraded platforms. So you don't want to lose that battle. So you want to keep a nice mix of 60/40. How do you get there? I would say in my cases, we have really asked our SVPs or someone way up there, literally play golf, have that discussion with the other SVPs on the, between the business and technology, come up with their percentages for the next year. A lot of data can be provided to them so that they can discuss why 60/40 or why 70/30 and so on, so that they can make that determination. Once that determination is made, it becomes so simple to scale the backlog for technology as well as business. They don't have to meddle on the other side, which means if the pipeline for business is full with 60% of capacity being applied to the work, 40% automatically can take care of the technology initiatives. And that's really important because that way we don't want to get into the repetitive arguments about what goes first. This gives you a lot of time to really think about business and what the deliverables should be, rather than fighting the battles over and over again on this front. So hopefully it will solve the problem for you. Value stream mapping. So if you have not thought about this, value streams have come from the Kanban or Lean, school of thoughts. Value streams is not just value; they are more than that. So the customer, for example, if they are into construction business or they are into product, if your product is offering multiple major functionalities, all that, those should be considered as value streams, because the value is continuously flowing for those advantages for the customers. That's really important. If we understand that, and Japanese people started looking at those aspects way back, 75 years ago or maybe more at Toyota, and that got implemented at Honda, Kia, so many different companies that they could see a really important factor there to get their values being streamed, which means a continuous flow of value to the customers. So that gets the teams focused much better on what the values are and what should we be getting out the door in terms of delivery. That also empowers the teams to discuss and weed out the non-important features, non-important product offerings that are not so important. So it should not be about opinions. It should be about data to determine what goes into the next release, if you will. So when you want to create these value streams, what's important is to define a customer value. When you define a customer value, the next thing you want to do is to create and analyze the current state of value stream mapping. So where do we stand now in the market? Where do we go next for future, right? Those are the things that you want to see and consider, look at the gap, and create the action plan. That's important to do. So if you look at the definition of value stream again, it's the processes of creating, producing, and delivering a good or service to the market. Very simple definition. How do you create and manage these value streams? Is organize the set of teams that you want to create for value streams. Manage the value stream teams, right, inside them. They have to have skills in order to continuously provide value back to the customers on that value stream. The next one is to monitor and control value streams by making sure that their pipeline to deliver results is full at all times. Not so much too much in the future, but actually to a level that the teams feel comfortable doing this, providing the value back to the customer all times. Improve the value stream, that's another factor. So not just keep on taking on action in terms of providing the value to back to the value stream, back to the customer, but also improve themselves by having better productivity, better alignment in terms of team, and so on. With that there comes the plan for the value stream to improve and an action plan to deliver. How I do this is create a project. When you have a project, when things are aligned in terms of value, the customers and the market research will tell you what are the gaps in the market. When you have the gaps in the market in front of you, what the next step is obviously to break it down into different features. And these features do not look at what the value streams are, because customer doesn't care what the value streams are. We as a company care for value streams. So if a customer is looking for an offering, and we have these features here, FE1, FE2, FE3, FE4, FE5, and FE6, now you want to see what features need what kind of skill sets. And these skill sets and domain knowledge is provided by the value streams. So, engage these value streams to work on those features and deliver those features. So this is a typical way your project should be. They are not lopsided. They are not looking at just the value streams, but the projects are always aligned to what the project needs are, the customer needs are, and so on. So if you divvy up your projects, with these value streams, it goes really smooth because these people inside the value stream have the technical know-how. They also have the domain knowledge to produce faster results. So this is how you manage your projects. Now, going over the project, how do you break these projects from the goals that your organization has, maybe from the CEO, maybe from the SVP, whatever level that you're comfortable with at your organization. The important thing to remember here is to convert these goals. Some companies like Google's, they have OKRs, that is the objective by key results. Some others might have goal-oriented delivery, or KPIs, key process initiatives, and so on, key product initiatives. So when you have that at the organization level or the direction to the organization right at that level, what you want to do is to create multiple initiatives from there so that these initiatives can really provide value back to these objectives or the goals from the leadership. So from these initiatives, you want to break down each of these initiatives by programs. So you see multiple programs being created for the initiatives. For each program, again, it's a huge deal. Sometimes these programs are 6 to 9 months. Sometimes in some companies there could be even 18 months if your roadmap is big. If your roadmap is just 1 year, the programs are about 3 to 6 months, 9 months. If the roadmaps, if you are with NASA, for example, if their roadmaps are like 5 years, you want to have really big programs, and you want to break those down into projects. Now, when you hit the projects, that is the right level where you want to prioritize these, because projects are the direct result of your market analysis, direct result of what your customer needs are, direct results also of your being ahead in the competition. So this is the level where you want to have your projects being prioritized. And when I say prioritize, this is not a traditional P1, P2, P3, P4, but they are literally 1 through N, 1 through 100. If you have these projects, like 100 projects in the pipeline, these projects belong to certain programs. So maybe 2 of these projects of this particular program are really important, but the third one could be a bells and whistles, so it can wait a little bit, but the other 5 projects from the other programs might be more important. So they need to be really prioritized here. The prioritization should be done by product management, business management, technology architects, and so on, and so that you have the right level of prioritization in place and right kind of buy into that. Now, from that to the 4th level, you have features, which means you're now going into something tangible that you want to deliver. A feature 1, 2, and 3, for example, for project 1 can accomplish the objective of project 1. As an example, if you have something like an Amazon feature, for example, you're working with Amazon, there are features there. Most of the people use Amazon, so I'm taking that simple example here. So if you have features in terms of users, user profiles or cancellation of the order, or booking the order, going through the cart. You obviously know, as soon as I talked about these three, what are most important projects or features. So those need to be done first. So in this case, unless you buy a product, what's the point coming up with a cancellation of the product in your product? So you would definitely have that as higher. The cancellation would be lower. User stars, the merchant ratings, all of those things are important, but not as important as selling the product itself. So those will come later. So this is how you can come up with the feature ranking also. But these feature rankings are really important at the team level, so that they know what needs to be picked up first, what needs to be provided a solution first, and hit production floor. And this could be not just software, but it could be applied to any of the industries. If you are in the hospital industry, if you are in the construction business, it doesn't matter, or hardware, or software, or networking, all of that would be, that would be the level where you want to have rankings, so that the teams can deliver and provide the right kind of value back to the customers. From that, the small little pieces are stories. These stories are the stories that get picked up at a sprint level, at an iteration level, if you have the agile teams. As I said, you must have agile teams, but you have to have all these layers so that your organization can work smoothly with agility. So if you have these stories come up from inside the feature, those are the ones that get into your sprint planning, that get into, depending on the capacity, you come up with a line in the sand on how many stories you can do and how many stories you can deliver in 1 week, 2 weeks, whatever your length of your sprint or iteration is. Right? So this is how to make that team level iteration become an org level iteration, and how everyone can align there. So as I said previously, forced ranking maintained at project level is really important, and then of course the feature and the stories as we go into the team levels. So this is an example of those projects. Projects definitely need to have the value streams attached, and when I say value stream, as you know earlier, some of the features inside those projects are delivered by other value streams. So those are the supporting functions, supporting value streams. But these value streams that are laid out here as an example are the primary or the owner value streams. So it will be owned by a value stream, a particular project, because that project belongs to a certain domain, and that certain domain belongs to a certain value stream. But of course, when we deliver this project, the support is needed from the other value streams, and that's important. So none of the value streams are getting into silos. They're just having ownership on each and every project, but they also support the other project that belong to other value streams, as a support mechanism. So it's a great way to spread the knowledge and make the knowledge redundant, which is really needed. If you look at how people work these days, if you want to swap around, go into a different team, you learn different things, then you're allowed to, and this model will allow you to do that really seamlessly. If all your team members know all kinds of functionality going into your project, nothing like it. That will make your teams fungible, which means they can be moved into the other domains depending on their liking, depending on their experience. They can move into different skill sets, so that they are continuously learning. These are the ways you can keep your employment base really active and engaged and learning. So if you provide them with autonomy, mastery, and purpose, these teams are going to be there with you for long term. In this economy, in this era, we cannot have constantly working on the same stuff. People want to change, learn more, and master those new skills. So if you have read, or if you have not read the book, by Daniel Pink, that's where he talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. If you provide these factors to your employment base, then, or your staff, actually that is what is going to give you the winning strategy of not losing people to your competitors or to the market. So moving into continuous prioritization and incremental planning. This is the most important crux. So if you look at your projects, at any given point in any organization, doesn't matter whether you are in one industry or the other, but you have certain projects, see those in green, are in flight. That means execution is going on those projects. There are projects that are detail sized and release planned. Those are the blue ones. Those are the projects that the teams know about, in and out about it. They are groomed. They know when it comes to execution, they'll be able to work through them and can deliver results. Then the next set of projects are the projects that are concept sized, or they are the projects that the teams know a little bit about, but they are not to the depth. They are not investigated enough. They are not spiked enough, if you want to talk about the Agile language around this. So if they have not spiked, they know, how they will work on it, but there's still gray in there. There are some questions back to the market, back to the product management about, if this happens, then what? So if then analysis is not complete at that level, but as a overall project deliverable, they understand what that is. So for example, if I tell you, back to that Amazon example, we want to be able to have the customer cancel the product order that was going to come 3 days later to your house. You want to cancel that. Okay, great, I understand, but do you know all the nitty-gritty details about it at this point? Maybe not, because we never talked about it. Those are the ones that are groomed a little bit. They're concept sized, but not yet planned to be delivered. They do not have a start and end date for the project. They do not have the dependencies mapped within the value streams and so on. If you look at the ungroomed ones, those are the ones that are greenfield. That's something that the market research scientists or your product management or the business is constantly looking at towards they're looking out of the window from your organization into the market and trying to gather what that new functionality could be that we can deliver to the market and win over the competition, win over the hearts of the customer, so on and so forth. But do the technology teams know about that? No, they don't know anything about that. Those are the projects that are coming in completely new, net new to the backlog. But the backlog has place for all these kinds of shades of projects, if you will. The next one is, if you look at the Scrum teams, your Scrum teams overall are working on not just one project. Be with me in this world, even though by books they should be focusing on one project, one feature, one story at the same time. They are not. As a matter of fact, in the enterprise world, they are working on multiple projects because of the priorities that they have, the skills that they have, and the urgency that they have, so on and so forth. So if you look at they working on the sprints, the projects can go as long as 5 or 6 sprints, and if these are sprints 1 week or 2 weeks worth, we're talking about if it's a 2 week worth sprint, we're talking about 1 month, 2 months, and about 3 months for this project, and the other one will take more than that, and this one is just a couple weeks, and so on. So it's important to see if we are standing here from where the project have begun. The important thing is to look at the next 3 months. So if you look at next 3 months, it's really good, because now you're going to make your teams have a pipeline of what's coming in there. That will give them what's coming in future for their work. That will help these teams to not just do the work for today, but also create hooks for the future. That's important because the architects can work out on how the architecture should be for their product, or the visionaries to look at how the project and the other projects that are coming in for the market are going to be different for 3 months, after 3 months. But we would stick to 3 months commitment, not beyond that. So projects can always come, but from the team perspective, they are committed to only 1 month. So if you look at, after a month, you see all these new projects are coming in. These are gray, which means they're getting groomed, they're getting concept sized, but teams know a little bit about it, not too much. But these are blue ones, so these are coming really fast and furious at the teams to get executed. So, these are the ones that are detail sized and release planned as they're coming into the pipe, really close to execution. So they are ready. So when they go into the next month, these projects will get into execution and will be chalked out for delivery. If you look at this particular purple one, this means that this project is complete, and so on. So as we move on every month, we will see more and more projects getting delivered, but projects have a different length. We cannot be myopic about projects being 3 months long, right? The reality is some projects are small, some projects are big, so some are 1 month. Long, some of them are a lot longer, like 9 months, whatever it is. But when they are planned, a smooth execution is going on, and unless there is a market need for disruption, there is a market need for disruption to stop these projects, then we will stop these projects, and they will get into hold until we get further indication from the market to move ahead with it, or just abandon it and move on to the next one, so that we are not sinking our resources, our time, our staff to the work that is not going to be useful back to the customers. So just like I said, if you look at the holistic picture of all the value streams that you have, in this case there are 4, you want to, as a leader, you want to see the 3 months window of what projects are coming up For our value streams, that means, 70, 100 teams. Those are the projects that are green, that are being executed, and some of the projects are getting in the pipeline. They understand what these are, and then there are some projects that are gray, which means they're coming up. Technology or the teams that are executing know a little bit about it, but not a whole lot, and they're getting in there. So continuously, you'll see that the projects are getting done with purple. More and more projects are getting into detail size, detail knowledge, and new projects are coming in the pipeline for future. So that way, you're making sure your teams are continuously working on something really important, something really valuable, and so on. This is really important. This is something, if you implement in your organization, your agility at the organization will go off the roof. It's hard to implement, but something to look at and come up with your plan on how to do it. So if you look at now the portfolio planning flow, how do we get to what I just described there? So you have a product backlog, new ideas are coming in there, business is continuously vetting, or technology in this case also for technology projects are vetting in and coming up with their approval on what projects are viable, what projects are really good for the company, for the customers, and so on. Technology then takes a look at it from product owner perspective, from looking at and doing a hip-to-hip conversation about how is it going to change the world? What is the new revenue that we're looking at? What is the new customer value that we're trying to provide, and so on? And that gets approved through technology. And if not, there are questions, Q&As that happen, and ultimately, that comes into the technology approval. Once that happens, the product owners or TPMs, the technology product management goes into writing stories. So that means smaller chunks, so that the teams, the technology teams, can take it and deliver results when it comes to sprint planning. When they are doing that, looking at the feature set that technology approved, the VDO, our PMO with value delivery alignment, is looking at that, and they are making sure they are concept sized, so that the business can take a look at it and say, okay, this is going to be 200 days worth of work. Is our customer okay with that? Are they going to pay for that? Is it worth it? And so on. So when the technologies, the product owners are writing stories, they're also going back to business and getting them reviewed, because we don't want to have a telephone game there. So when you were a child, when you talk on, whisper something in the next person's ears, the next person understands a little bit differently. And if you go around the kids, what comes back as a message, it was completely different from what the original was. You don't want to get into that problem. So these people who are writing stories are always going back to business and understanding and giving them the understanding of what they understood and whether that can make the project successful. Does it consider all the aspects of the project that business thought about at the start? And then going into detail size. So when the whole business is reviewed what that is, we go into the teams, again, the value delivery office gets gets it groomed by the team, and the team says how much time is it going to take. At the concept size level, they might say 200, but when we get the details, that might be 240 or 320, whatever amount of days that might take. And there is a start and end date to that because the team knows about it, and then it gets into execution when the time comes, and the execution ends when as we saw, depending on what the size is and so on. So this is the flow. If you implement this flow, your organization can have a lot of agility built into the org. So when we're doing that, of course, that was a nice sunny day scenario. But if you look at the reality, you will see that we always get different pointers from the customers, difference in opinion, competition getting close to us, and so on and so forth. So there are change in scopes. There are architectural changes. There are, because of the architectural change, there could be a delivery date change, or there could be simply discoveries. We didn't know about that. That goes into that unknown paradigm. So if you are working on that, one day your unknown unknowns become known unknowns, and then they become known knowns, right? So that's the journey of the change management. So if you have that in place, you come up with a process on how to handle that change, and make sure that we are embracing change, not pushing back on it, because then you lose the whole understanding of what agility means. Agility means you are embracing change and you're making sure your organization is pivoting, changing, navigating through, all the stuff, all the pointers that the organization is getting, and going into the winning stride. So really quickly, transparency across organization is really important to keep the employees engaged, and not have, when you have a very fast running shop, you just don't want to make it opaque, because that is not going to help anyone. So these are the typical planning trends that I come up with. So if you look at number of projects that are submitted for planning in that particular month, the projects that are concept size, and the projects that are detail size. So as you see, as we go in the year, every month, not in a quarter once, but we are doing every month. So think about your competitor not having any kind of adjustments in the year. Are they going to win you? No. Some of the competition, if they are doing once in 3 months, are they going to win you? No, because you have an ability at an org level to go change, pivot, be nimble, and make a difference to the world by changing and providing the value the customers need, and the value that the organization needs to be successful, and bring more revenues back to the base, so that we can then provide more value to the customer. So it's like an upward spiral right there. So if you look at the next one, this is another one. We over week, we do this. Go into August planning. These are the steps that we just talked about in that block diagram. So there are dates for each. So simple as, okay, if you cannot, so for example, B, technology approved prioritized project list. On 7/31, whatever came in is going to get into further planning. If something is not available there, They wait for another month, but not another 3 months. It's just another month, right? And there is a reason why it's not ready. So it's basically a train concept where you have a train on the platform, whatever goods and people are available, they're getting into the train and the train moves on. That doesn't stop just because one last crate or one last box hasn't arrived at the platform, right? The train has a timing and it just comes and goes, and all these are trains, so these are just coming and going through the platform, and that makes your organization really fast, predictable, and nimble. So month over month, we keep talking about what the dates are, making sure these dates are hit, and where we are from those milestones perspective, something that's on track for those dates, issues that if there are any completed milestones and so on for the planning. That's really important. If you look at the next one really fast is CA Agile Central Reports. We use Rally. We also use Jira for this, bringing this agility in there. So there's a lot of data. The source of truth for projects, features, stories is all everything that's in Rally. And the data gets into reports, and we can see all these reports day in, day out, on demand. There are no slide decks. The information is right there. The teams are working every day and marking them as started, marking them as completed, marking them as in progress, marking them as on hold. All of that is seen by the entire leadership. That's the kind of transparency you want to bring. Now, final one is to see how this data, so when you have a funding, you get from funding to work, and from work, whatever earned value you got, like the EVM, earned value management. So whatever earnings you have from the work you delivered, you can get that funding to support the teams that you have, to support the employee base that you have. So whatever is the other thing is the planned velocity. Whatever you thought the velocity was, and whatever the actual velocity is, there is always that counterbalance that is going on, so that we go from the one month to the next, and we see that our planned velocity gets better with the knowledge of what's coming in as the actual velocity. The value is not just getting translated to customers, but to the organization by having these budgets and funding getting reconciliated as the teams are working on it. So we have complete control on finances, complete control on accounting for the projects that we work on at the organization level. At the level that I'm working on these organizations, we get about 80 projects to be planned, 85 projects to be planned month over month. And in a year, we're talking about 500, 550, 600 projects being delivered by 5 different locations all over the earth, different time zones and so on. So it's possible, it's completely scalable. I have run it not just at one organization, at multiple organizations. So I really hope you get something out of it from this session, and now we will open it up for questions from the audience. Thank you.
And thank you for that amazing presentation. I do want to just have one moment of housekeeping here for a second. We'll jump into the Q&A, but the chat window is for discussing the content. And if you have technical issues or questions that you want to post to the presenters, that's in the Q&A and tech support window. So if we could try to respect that, I know a lot of people are trying to comment with each other, and that's kind of getting a little mixed up. So we want to make sure that you knew that there was 2 windows there in which you can present feedback to us, and we're monitoring that. And so we have a ton of questions, Anup, that's come in. And one of the biggest themes that I'm picking up on a lot of the questions is, how is value defined? Is that revenues, a new product, or when we're talking about value streams, how do you define value in different organizations?
Great question. Thank you for this opportunity, first of all, and I really hope this presentation makes sense to many of our audience. To answer this question, the value is such a thing that it's, in the old days, I would say, was only revenue, right? But today we're talking about customer, right? So what is customer value really depends on what kind of organization you're working with. If you're with banking, for example, what really makes sense is whether it's security is the biggest aspect, scalability, and then availability. So if you are working with a bank, you want your banking transactions to go smoothly and do not have any kind of disruption. So those are values for banking products. If you are thinking of more look and feel type of organizations like the social media, what really matters there is how fast, how quickly, and how lovely it looks, right? So it's more about usability. It's UX that's really important, and whether it's flexible or not, whether it's scalable to the entire world or not, those are the factors that actually make a value for the organization. So that's the reason we just call it value. You have to really translate what is value for your organization and come up with 5 or 6 of those ilities. Now, if you want to know what those ilities are, this basically scalability, availability, maintainability, and so on and so forth. And you can just on your search engine, you can just find out what that some of those things, and come up with your scale of what really matters to your customers. And that actually builds in your streams. The value streams are nothing but a continuous flow of value back to your customers. And in this day and age, there's not one value, but there are multiple values that we all cater to. Some are really implicit, some are explicit. So having your teams being carved out in that sense really makes sense. Then we can focus on those values accordingly.
And I think what it really does too is it almost makes your strategic planning cycle, especially at the executive layer, almost writing things like user stories, but doing it from a strategic advantage. So, for instance, it's not improve customer satisfaction, right? Because then you can say, well, if one customer is much happier, do we win? It's improve customer satisfaction through a better website that responds 20% faster, and then that's what you can take down and start to attribute value to. Do you use a similar approach?
Absolutely. And then value streams are those set of teams that are focusing on that. They're honing on that, so that if there is value to the customer, we don't want to drop it by any stretch. So we want to make sure customer keeps getting the value and adds value every day. And some of the companies, because of the continuous improvement, continuous delivery, they're adding value every hour, every minute, if some of the companies are doing that. So it's really important to understand value to your organization and your customers.
And a very insightful question came in. I sat and reflected on this a little bit as well. But when we start talking about the shift and move from PMO to a VDO, right? So from project management organization to a value delivery organization, who convinces that organization that they need to move there? Where does that start?
So whenever I have done, I have seen that it's actually only excitement that kicks in into the leadership when you start that conversation. Now, a simple question: if you go to leadership, go to, like, if I'm talking about now software engineering to start with, but think about product management. You go to their leadership, you go to engineering leadership, and say, "Hey, how about our PMO focusing on delivery?" Now, there's no way to debate that any help that the overall organization gets from delivery is much higher than just keeping standards, for example, right? So it's always a welcome conversation. Now, who do you go get the blessing from? It really depends on where the power is in your organization. But in a typical software company or hardware company, it's basically the engineering, the product management of the world. That's where the power is. And if you start that conversation, actually you become partners and you start working shoulder to shoulder with them, because the focus directly is delivery of the best possible value back to the customers. It's not even debatable that the conversation goes really well. You just have to know what it means to deliver value before you start that conversation. So what's in it for me is the question you need to have answers for when you talk to these people.
Yeah, we say that's the radio station that everybody listens to is WIIFM. What's in it for me, right? Any closing words for the group, Anup?
I just think that, as I always say, having teams doing agile stuff is just a great start. But if you have to move up the ladder in terms of getting your organization be agile, that there are different approaches that you have to take. What got you there is not going to get you to a place where the organizational agility is high. The scale is very different. So I want to caution people who are trying to make the organization agile. Is not just by having multiple teams do agile with different methods, but look at some of the approaches that I have provided, and I'm sure there are certain other approaches. And this is a live community, so I'm sure we are going to learn from each other and make a better agile organization in the future.
And we'd like to say thank you for sharing with us. I think it's one of the most important things we can do is share our experiences with the community so that we all can learn and grow. So we appreciate your time, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, and thank you all.
And so just a couple of other quick announcements. Please make sure that you visit the exhibit hall, go to the PMI booth, go visit our sponsors. And you can also join the world's largest community of professional project managers by visiting projectmanagement.com. You can connect with subject matter experts there, find a wealth of content to make sure that your job is easier. And we have a booth for them as well in the exhibit hall. And while you're connecting on projectmanagement.com, make sure that you register for our next virtual event. That's going to be Wednesday, November 7th for the PMI Business Analysis Virtual Conference. So we're going to have another fantastic event just like this one. And for those of you wondering about PDUs, please make sure that you know we're going to report those for you on your behalf. So the fact that you're logged in, the fact that you attended, we know that, and we're going to go ahead and do that automatically for you. If you do not see the PDU show up in 21 business days, then you can reach out at that point, but please allow us at least 2 to 3 weeks after this event to make sure that we can record everybody's PDUs. With that, we're going to be right back here at 2:30 Eastern Daylight Time, and we're going to be with Ivan Pettit, who's going to be talking to us about agile approaches on large projects in large organizations. I know there was a lot of questions about how does this scale to large organizations, how do you deal with large organizations, and Ivan's going to share some of his expertise with us. So we'll be right back here at 2:30, and we'll talk to you soon.